Before we start talking about education in an online world, I thought it might be interesting to start exploring what happens when this explosion of online education, what happens to the traditional lecture theatre where someone like me or Brian or Anant stands in front of a 300 people and delivers knowledge. So what is going to happen to the traditional lecture, Anant, from your perspective?
You know, the way I look at it, first of all, you know, what are we doing with the lecture? So lecture is where you come to class and you spend 50 minutes listening to a professor. And we had a discussion this morning, and Cam, I think he's the student president, and he said something about this person stands there, and he drones on and on for 55 minutes. And so it's his words, not my words. And if this is how students feel, I think we should listen to our customers and do something different and engage them differently through multimedia, online technology, and so on, so that maybe we can blend the classroom where learners and students can watch videos at their own time. They can have interactive exercises in their own dorm rooms and hostels. And when they come to class, they can interact with the professor in very creative ways, through discussions. So the professor can explain some hard-to-understand concepts. Students can work with each other. There's numerous ways in which we can change the classroom. And then to the question, what happens to the lecture hall? I really think that every university needs at least one lecture hall in the future.
One.
How else would we one? How else would we tell our grandchildren, your grandparents used to come here and sit in neat little rows here. And they'll say, wow, really? You all came and sat down here in rows and one person sat there and droned on and on? I think the future will be totally different.
So you mentioned blended learning. We keep coming across the phrase the flipped classroom. Could you explain to me the difference or the similarities or whether it's the same concept between those two ideas?
Sure. So blended learning is a broader concept, and the flipped classroom is one example of blended learning. So blended learning simply says that in universities and schools, you combine online with in-person. So you can combine these in many, many ways. So that's blended learning. You blend online with in-person. The flipped classroom is one way of doing it, where today you listen to the professor in class, and then you do your homeworks and exercises in your dorm rooms. The flipped classroom is one where you flip it, where you watch brief videos, like YouTube videos, 5, 7, 8 minute videos, and maybe even do some interaction with the computer and so on. And then you come to class, and in class, there's no lectures anymore, but you do problem solving, working with your fellow students, asking questions of the professor. So you kind of flipped how it works, and that's the flipped classroom.
Okay. Brian, I know talking to you earlier that one of the things you're really interested in exploring is how teaching online can actually improve your teaching, face-to-face teaching. Could you explain to the audience how you're sort of seeing that work?
Sure. I mean, it really ends up being a new tool. And so to the question about the lecture, I think there will be some form of it. I just don't know what it's going to be. And we have this new platform by which we can teach better. And so, my perspective is how can all the people I'm trying to teach get something more out of it? So the idea of spending time getting that droning out of the classroom, where you break it into 5-minute chunks as we're learning is important, because at 11:06 in my 11 a.m. class, everyone's gone to sleep, it turns out. I just haven't realized it.
I'm sure it's not true.
And so,
but you're lucky to show up to class. In my classes towards the latter half of the semester, you're lucky if at MIT in many classes, 25 to 30% even show up to class. So.
Oh, okay. So so you have that. You want to get rid of the stuff that's not working very well, and replace it in this this platform that allows you to combine lectures and homework and thought-provoking things and ability to communicate. Get that out of the classroom, and then do what I'm really good at answering, which are open-ended questions. Now that's not going to be so easy for this platform to tackle, but in classroom I want to do the things that really require person-to-person activity or require something you can't really think of in advance. And so from my perspective, yeah, it really is some aspect of flipping the classroom or blending the learning, where you get that stuff that you don't have to be here in a, all in seats there listening to me with no feedback. Rather, get that stuff out and then the individual stuff in the classroom back. And for really large 300-person classes, maybe that those disappear. The 300-person lecture may not make sense anymore in the future because 300 people, well, you can use clickers and things to get some interaction there, but you can do that online as well. So it's not clear to me that that's going to have a future except for as entertainment.
Okay, Anant, we haven't used the word MOOC yet. It's one of the world's ugliest acronyms, I do believe, but it's, it's in common usage now. Perhaps just for the sake of, before we go any further, you explain what a MOOC actually is.
Sure. So MOOC is a four-letter word. Begins with an M. It stands for Massive Open Online Course. And so these are courses created by universities like ANU, like the course, The Mysteries of the Universe and so on, where you can sign up for the course. The course is massive because Brian's and Paul's course have about 10, 15,000 students signed up from all over the world, so it's massive. It's open in that you don't have, just imagine, you don't have to go through an admissions exam to get admission into a university. Anybody can take it. It completely inverts the model. Just imagine, anybody can take a course from some of the world's best professors. Just imagine that. So it's open. There's no admissions exam. And you know what? Another four-letter word that begins with an F? Free. It's open, it's free, and anybody can sign up for a course. And then it's online because if you have a computer and internet connection, you can take it online. And it's a course. So that's a MOOC.
So one of the things that we hear about MOOCs is that while there are massive numbers of people enrolling in them, we also know that there's only about 7% retention rate. Is this a problem? So
let's look at what the retention rate means. So you have a lot of students sign up for a course, and these courses are taught by professors who teach similar courses on campus. These are rigorous courses. The course that I taught was a course on circuits and electronics. How many of you here are electrical engineers? See, that makes my point. The rest of them all, there's one. The rest of them all working hard, with differential equations and so on. They don't have time to come to this. So this was a really hard course with differential equations as prerequisites and so on. 155,000 students signed up to take the course, and 7,200, about 5 to 6%, passed the course. So by one measure, the retention rate was 5 to 6%, and doesn't look great. So if you were a university, you would not survive if 5 to 6% passed the course. But you're comparing apples and oranges in that this is an open course. Open means that anybody can take it, whether you have the background or not. We have 11-year-olds taking courses all the way to 88-year-olds. So all people in all walks of life trying things out, experimenting. Some people get a little bit out of it, some people get a lot out of it. If you come to university, this is an MIT course. At MIT admits between 5 and 10% of students that apply. So MIT admits, 7 or 8% of students that apply. So it's not surprising then that for an open course, about 6% of students are able to pass the course. And these are students that have no skin in the game, so to speak. They're not paying $40,000 in tuition. And what we are also finding is that we have a verified certificate option where people pay a small fee to get a verified certificate where the ID is checked. And when they pay a small fee, even $25, we find that the retention rate shoots up to 60%. So I think we can tweak the retention rate, and I don't set great store by the retention rate.
Okay. So Brian, you're obviously a bit of a rock star academic researcher. When a lot of people know about you, you've got a Nobel Laureate, does it worry you that of those 10,000, 20,000, up to 100,000 people that enroll in your course, that a lot of them could be described as, maybe astrophysics tourists, or, that it's the cult of the celebrity professor that's attracting them, that they're not really serious about your course, that they're kind of academic voyeurs? Or are you just happy to share with whoever turns up?
I'm happy. The beautiful thing is because they're open, and what people are going to get out of a MOOC is defined by them. I'm just giving the best I can. So the fact that some people may just want to watch the videos and stare at Paul's beautiful eyes as opposed to someone else's, and waistcoat, yes, that's fine. I have no expectations of them, nor should I. I want to let people go through, see what I have to offer, and get as much out of it as they can, and I'm okay with that. So no, I have no problem with whatever people want to get out of it.
So what do you want them to take away from it?
I would like some people to learn the basics of astrophysics, the basics of physics and some math in a setting which hopefully is engaging and enjoyable to them. I would like some people to use that as a basis to improve their prospects of getting further education. And I would like some people just to sort of get a basic idea and not even try to do the problem sets and just get a sense of what we do. And other people can look at the pictures, whatever floats their boat, ultimately.
But this is the extraordinary thing, isn't it? That anybody, any normal person, anybody in this room, anybody from Blacktown in Sydney, anyone from China or Rwanda or anyone else can sign up for any course, whether it's in philosophy or computer science or astrophysics. It's this great leveler, isn't it? That it brings the massive world almost a bit closer, and that we can. There's a creativity to it and an egalitarianism to it.
Absolutely, it's you know, I call MOOCs the ultimate democratizer. And in terms of diversity and breadth of the kind of things people want to do, I'll give you an example. I was talking to the student, Baha, from University of Texas, Austin, and they're also an edX partner. So I was chatting with him last week, and so he's a student in the UT Austin campus, and if you look at, he's a typical student. And in our current system, all our students are really used to be going through a stovepipe experience. For an electrical engineer, you take mostly electrical engineering courses. And that's how we were all brought up. You get a degree in electrical engineering. However, if you look at the world today, the millennial generation, they're much, much broader. And what we are finding is that they have a very different perspective. They care about world issues. You know, they care about philanthropy. They care about languages. They care about culture, they care about electrical engineering. You know, it's a much wider class of subjects that people care about today. And the world is becoming a much, much more interactive, global, social, interactive, multidisciplinary world. But the university systems haven't changed. It's still stovepipe. And so what Baha said was what he'd like to do was, of course, he was doing media studies and learning more media studies. But at the same time, he was taking all these other courses which he, in some cases, he just wanted to get a nodding acquaintance with the course. In other cases, he wanted a certificate. So, you know, he could engage with a number of other subjects. And he said, as a student in a university, I would never have had the chance to learn about all these other things and broaden my horizons.
Okay. The naysayers, there are people sort of fall into two camps on MOOCs. The people who absolutely love them and think they're the absolute transformation of education, which is, I think, your camp. And there are others who say it's going to be the end of the traditional university, it's the end of ANU. What's your response to that?
So my response to that is that there's online learning and there's campus. I think the two are very different. They're different products. And it's like saying, you know, when apples were invented, oh my God, these will put mangoes out of business. I mean, you know, but it's two different, you know, just two different things. And the campus experience is very, very different. There are a number of things that the rite of passage, you know, you have discussions with other students, you learn how to interact with each other, you learn how to, you know, you're growing up, you know, you are working with professors and doing research, you're, you know, getting inspired by professors and by other students and working together. All of these things, some parts of it can happen online, but it's a very different experience. So I don't see online learning as replacing the campus. I see online learning as improving campus, which is why I like to say that online learning is like a rising tide that will lift all boats. It will provide access to students that don't have access to education. And if you're on a campus, hopefully it will engage you better. And you know, with online learning, give you a much better experience when you had a good experience to begin with on campus.
So, Brian, we heard from the federal government and from our Education Minister, Christopher Pyne, as well as the Prime Minister. There seems to be an intimation that they're very, very interested in online learning and perhaps utilising MOOCs in some way. as a way of perhaps offsetting the cost to government of educating large numbers of people. Is that a true interpretation, and what would you say to the government about such notions?
Well, I can't speak for the government, but I could say that I don't think MOOCs are going to make education necessarily cheaper. What they are going to do, if done correctly, is make education better. So let's take a university that right now provides, quite frankly, a low standard of education. I don't think they're going to survive. They're going to either lift their game on the campus experience or be overtaken. So some universities may well, run, be the dodo bird if they don't adapt. But places like the ANU, we're going to use it, and you're still going to have me and trying to teach and do more and maybe even have more personal time. And creating a MOOC is a non-trivial experience. They're not easy. They're not something that you can do just instantly relative to a class. So they have expenses associated with them, and as the campus experience, we want to make everyone get something better, which is, I think, there's no evidence to me that our students of Australia are overeducated. They're getting too good of an education. I would say quite the contrary. So I think this is a way, again, to float the boats, raise the level, and you might be able to do it more efficiently, you might not, but it's not obvious it's going to be cheaper. But I think it will be better.
Because one of the key elements of a good MOOC that we know so far, and perhaps you can fill in on that, is they're not cheap to produce, are they? I understand $100,000 will produce, one MOOC that'll go for about nine weeks.
Yeah,
that's a big investment from a university when no one's paying for it.
Right, and that does not include the professor's time, I'll promise
you.
Because, normally when you get up and give a lecture, you don't have every word rehearsed. If you make a little mistake, oh, sorry about that. But when you're filming, of course, you don't tend to just leave great big pauses and mistakes. You refilm, and filming takes, 3 to 1 compared to just doing it live. Then you have to set up the equations that you're going to test on the online setting. And because you're breaking things down into nice little digestible things, you're thinking a lot more about how you teach. That all takes time. And from my experience, it takes a lot of time, but you end up with a much better product out of it.
Because the writing process of writing those 9-week courses and is very different from the way you deliver a lecture. So you've completely had to sort of dismantle
It's like you delivering a lecture, and then you do refinement. So it starts with the same, but then you just give out and give it your lecture. And in this case, you put it on, you're like, God, I can do that better, and I can fix this, and I can add that. And I really need to think about what I'm doing in this case, because you're not doing it live, because as soon as you do something, say, well, I could do better, you do better.
There's one other important point, though, which is that the upfront cost, whether it's $50,000 or $100,000 or more, that's an investment. So that's the first time you create the course. But after you create it once, then you offer it again and again. And you may tweak it in various ways and improve it. But the second time around, the course that I taught, for example, that course has now been offered through edX by MITx 4 times. And I promise you, the first time when my colleagues and I created the course and taught it, we have deep scars on our back from how hard we worked and thought and rethought and tried to get a really good product. But the second time around, I promise you, it's like falling off a log. Now, I've been teaching at MIT for 26 years, and even today, when I have to go into a lecture, I got to psych myself up. It's with 100 students sitting there, and it's a scary experience, and you got to practice, and each time you deliver a live lecture, which let's say a 1-hour lecture, I must spend many, many hours preparing and thinking about various things, tweaking it. So it's a 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5, 6 to 1 ratio. Yeah. But once you've done the recordings and so on, a lot of it can be reused. And so the second time around and a third or fourth or fifth is much more inexpensive, and you can focus on the value add with the student experience.
Okay, so you've delivered it 4 times. So what's the total number of students who've actually done that course? So enrolled
in 6002X, that's a circuit in electronics. I actually don't know. I think it may be $250,000 or more.
It's extraordinary. Could you told a story earlier about a student from Mongolia. Could you perhaps share that with the audience? Because I think it's very insightful.
Sure. The MOOCs are this amazing experiment, and all kinds of new things are coming out of it. There's just incredible stories of human beings whose lives are being touched in many different ways. So there's one story of the student Bartushig. So Bartushig he was a 15-year-old when he took the first MOOC on edX from Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. He was a 15-year-old in Sant High School. And this kid is a genius. So he takes his edX circuits course. It's a hard MIT sophomore, second, third year course in electrical engineering and computer science. And this guy knocks off 100. I mean, he gets 100% in this course. He's one of 300 students worldwide out of 150,000 who gets 100. Incredible. And then the student begins applying the knowledge of what he learned in the course, and he's building devices and so on in Mongolia. And then he applies to MIT, and he gets into MIT, and now he's a freshman at MIT. So people's lives are being changed, where they're using this as a credential to get a better life, to get a better education. Many students another learner who took the Berkeley Software as a Service course. He had a job. He was in New York. And he just posted his certificate on LinkedIn. Next day, he got a call from a company in New York, said, hey, we have an opening, come and interview. He got a job, and now he's working at the other company. So whether it's jobs, whether it's education, people around the world are finding different ways in which this can enrich their lives.
I met Daphne Koller, who's the head of another MOOC called Coursera last year, and she told the story of a boy with severe autism who had a total verbal language of 125 words. I think he was 16 or 17 at the stage, and he enrolled in a course in poetry at Princeton. And it was just absolutely, he topped the course. It's, as she said, it was a really hard course for kids going to Princeton. This kid had basically a special ed education, which, as she said, was enough if you sat there quietly and didn't muck up. That was good. And this kid described it as the first meaningful educational experience he'd had his entire life. And then, of course, just went from there, and is now his entire education is involved in MOOC. So I think that's one of the things, that it's actually can be incredibly life-changing. Absolutely.
And there's so many stories of students that what we've done at edX is that if you come visit edX, we have a wall where we post learner stories, and as all of us walk in and out, we look at that and says, this gives meaning to life. I mean, this is incredible.
This is one of the important things about MOOCs, when we're coming back to that great democratisation, but vast numbers of people in places like Africa are actually using MOOCs to get white-collar jobs. They're actually using MOOCs to change their lives, aren't they?
Yes. So about 10% of our learners are from Africa. And again, I could sit here telling you stories about each of our learners all day long. In fact, on Tumblr, we ask our learners to write the stories on Tumblr. So another student called Claude from the Democratic Republic of Congo. A family of 14, he goes to University of Cape Town to get a computer science degree. His father dies in his first year. He can't pay his fees anymore, so he quit school and been working for 10 years in Cape Town. And now he discovered MOOCs, and he's taking in computer science courses, and he wants to get a job using computer science now. So the stories abound.
Okay. So one of the things another thing that keeps coming about MOOCs is the need. A lot of people don't see the point of them unless universities can actually make money out of them. Now, edX is a not-for-profit, and you have said that categorically, while it needs to be self-sustaining, you're not interested in money-making. Would the profit motive undermine what MOOCs are meant to be, the basic principles underlying them?
Well, it's not for me to say, whether it'll undermine MOOCs. Just that we felt that making edX non-profit was very important. Education is a basic human right. We really believe that everybody should have access to it like the air we breathe. All of our universities are basically non-profit, either government-funded, or in the US, whether you're private or a public university, they're all non-profits. There are very few for-profits. And so when we're doing something that is so fundamental, and even when we started edX, we knew this was going to be very revolutionary. And so we felt it very important that it be nonprofit. So when you have something this revolutionary, by making it nonprofit, you allow yourself to be guided by principle, not what will maximize ROI, return on investment, for VCs, where I've done 5 startup companies, and a number of times, after the second year or third year or fourth year, you get a $1 billion offer, but how do you turn it down? If investors are going to make a return of 20x on their money, you can't turn it down. It's a fiduciary responsibility to accept it. And then you've lost control, and then who knows where it's going to go. But with edX, by making it nonprofit, we can't be bought because we're free. So people say, look, can I get this? No, we give things away. So we gave away our platform. We made it open source, and so anybody can take our platform. We're the only MOOC provider that's open sourced our platform. And the reason is that the moment you open source your platform, your value plummets, because now you've created a competition for yourself. So today, anybody can take our crown jewels, our platform, and set up a competitor to edX. So if a consortium of universities in Australia decided, let's create a competitor to edX, you can go do that. We'll give you the software. So that's not a good business practice. And so, but that again is a indication where it's a principled move. We felt it's the right thing to do so that anybody can get access to the platform. And so we felt that being nonprofit is very critical.
Does it make a difference to you, Brian, that it's a not-for-profit?
Absolutely essential to me. To me, I was only interested in edX precisely for that reason. I want to be able to have the ability to contribute to it, but I also want to have control of it. And ultimately, every university I've ever been associated with is for public good. It's not for turning a profit. They pretty much all take donations. It means they're all nonprofit organizations. So I think when you suddenly are in this new disruptive technology, which might undermine your business, and they are for profit, that's a little ugly. I'm not sure if I want to be part of that. But when we're involved with something which is all about bringing education and knowledge out to the world, and it's not for profit, so you get to control how to do that as best you can, that's a model I'm very comfortable with. And I personally think will be the model that ends up working, because how are you going to compete against an open source platform if you're closed? I think those people are going to have a real challenge unless they provide something that's just vastly superior to what we're providing. And of course, we're out there trying to provide the best possible quality. And in my opinion, I think the edX courses are at the highest standard in the business right now.
Okay, thank you. On that note, I think we might put out to questions. There's microphones set up on either side of the room. So if you have a question, if you'd like to go down to the microphones and maybe line up. Yep.
Don't be shy.
Hi. My question is, how will MOOCs impact the campus experience? As a student, university means more than sitting in a lecture theatre listening to a lecturer droning on. It means being able to be part of a community where I can engage with students and staff with similar ideas. It's about building connections with people and engaging in challenging discussions which further the ideas that I form in the classroom. This experience seems fundamentally different to sitting at home behind a computer screen.
I think we agree with you completely. And so I'm going to give you two sides to the story. First of all, I think what we're saying is that what we want you to do is, instead of listening to us drone as a lecturer, where you don't get any of that stuff you just talked about in my class, I'd like you to do that droning stuff offline behind a computer, so that when you come to class, you do get to interact with me and the other students as best as possible. And of course, as we've all been talking about, we think this is going to be an add-on to make the campus experience even richer, so you still be hopefully living on campus and getting all those other things that you get today. But let's also take the person who isn't coming to the ANU, who's from Rwanda. They don't get anything. The alternative for them is nothing. One of the big things in the developing or the third world low-income countries is the lack of being able to use the human capital. That is, they're not educated. And how do you build a country without an education system? You build an education system. but they don't have the money to do that. They may be have war and all sorts of other problems that makes it very difficult. This provides for them something that's not as good as what you're going to get at the ANU, but much better than what they get now, that will then allow those countries to develop to the point where they can start their own universities and have that really high quality service. So again, I'm looking for something where everyone gets something better than they have now, and that human interaction is still core and actually becomes more of the focus of the education rather than less.
Do you want to add to that?
I think Brian said it very well, which is that there are certain aspects of campus that are really, really important. And Raphael Reif, who's the president of MIT, I think put it very well, which is that as universities and university leaders, he said, we really have to think hard about what is our value add. So today, if you look at a campus today, we do everything. At campus, we do admissions, we do healthcare, we do mental health counseling, we do admissions, we do teaching, we do research, we do career guidance, we do housing, we do food service. The list goes on and on and on. And this reminds me of the 60s and 70s in the US when you had AT&T did everything. I mean, they sold you this really ugly little pink telephone, and that looked that way for like 30 years. They owned the whole telecom system. They did all the billing. They did everything. And then in the early 80s, they unbundled. So unbundling happened, where the telephone manufacturers became Samsung or Motorola or somebody else, and you had all these revolution in phones. Content became provided by others. The services became provided by yet another group of people. And so the unbundling happened, and different people decided what is their core value add. And I believe that there will be unbundling in the university system as well, whereas university, we will think hard about what is our core value add. And I think improving the student experience, getting students to engage with each other, I think will be a key component of that value add. And what we will do is disinvest in other things that are better done by other means. So for example, lecturing and so on, and getting the content might be better done through online means. Maybe divest out of maybe credentialing. It could be that, again, I'm dreaming here, it could be that some universities might decide that the competency testing will be a separate exam created by some other agency, while they're going to focus on basic learning. The students learn, and the students can go and take different exams at various places to get different credentials. So I mean, who knows what the world is going to look like in the future? But I think all of us will need to think really hard about what is our core competence? What is our core value add? What do we double down on? And what are the things that we decide that, look, this is really not something that we should be doing?
Thank you. Question?
I just wanted to know what policies are in place regarding authenticity and knowing who is actually on the other side of the computer.
Good question.
Sure. So one part of MOOCs in education and so on is, unfortunately, I call that the unfortunate part of our business, which is we'd love to be pure and nice and teach everybody good stuff, but at the end of the day, there's a credential that students can get, and the credential has value. And so one of the things we do on edX is students can take courses on the audit track, which is free. They can also sign up for an honor code certificate, where they sign an honor code saying that this is all their own work. It's also free. Or they can sign up for a verified track, for which is a small fee. In the verified track, they get a verified certificate where we authenticate the learner. So when you sign up for the course, we use webcam technology to take a picture of the student, their face, and then we also they show their ID, and we take a picture of the ID. And then those are compared in the background, and we confirm that the name and the face match. So the ID matches your face and the name matches, and that authenticates the student. And we do that before a major exam as well. So then when they get the certificate, we have verified that it is who they say they are at the other end of the line or the wire or whatever. And when they get the certificate, we also have a digital signature on the certificate so that any employer can check. So every certificate has a code, a UUID, a universal UID. And so I think it's a 128-bit string It's a character string. So any employer, so as a student, you can give that string to any employer, and the employer can type that string into the computer, and edX maintains the record of the certificate, and so it's authentic. So you cannot fake it, because that string can be entered by the employer, and they'll see the same certificate. So we do a few of these things to validate the authenticity of the student and the certificate.
And I think you can expect this to get more sophisticated
over time. Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It'll be evolving as one of the key technologies.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question about the value-adding process that you discussed. You noted that the first time you gave an edX course, it was an extraordinary amount of setup work, and I've been talking to Paul and Brian, they've had the same experience, and I'm currently 2 weeks into an experiment of flipping my classroom, so I'm using Edge, and I spent since October putting my entire course on, so I know that setup course. And I'm personally very excited about the value-add process, so I totally buy everything that's been said on stage so far, in that we are now, in my course, providing a very different face-to-face experience, and I think there's a lot of value in that. And what's been sort of tickling the back of my mind, since I knew I was going to get this chance to give a question here, was how, or at least what is known about what value-adding you can do online. So it's clear that there's a lot you can get from having world experts with you in the class, guiding you through big, complicated things and open questions and that sort of thing. What fraction of that experience and what methods do you have for reproducing that in a scalable setup?
You want to start with the track edit?
Well, to my mind, one of the really exciting parts about this technology is you can more easily quantify what works. So I don't actually know the answer to your question, but what I do know is that you will be able to answer the question yourself, what works in your own course, compare to the notes of what everyone's doing around the world, and adopt new technologies. I already have learned that at 6 minutes, people get bored with my lectures. I would have guessed it's at least been a half hour before. 6 minutes. As I said, it makes me wonder what happens at the end of my class when people come to it. So I think it's going to be a process of learning, and you have a lot more experience in the space, but I'm very excited about actually building up evidence about what works.
So now it's done it for 4 years, so I'm wondering if he's already got some evidence that he can share.
Sure, I think there's a lot of examples. And one of the things that we do, this is all an experiment. And when you say, Anant has a lot more experience, we're talking about 6 months, okay?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is about two years and 3 months old. And so we're all, juveniles here. But again, second, not really answering your question, and I'll get to the answer in a second, is that we have something called the X Consortium, where our partners, our core partners, the charter members are part of an X Consortium, where we also have a pedagogy and learning subgroup of the X Consortium that gets together to brainstorm and talk about what is working and what is not working. And our hope is that as instructors try different things, we will share the lessons of what has worked and what has not worked, so all of us learn. And everyone's doing experiments. And so right now, I don't think we have even a 1/100th of the answers. But things are emerging in terms of what works and what doesn't work. I'll throw out a few examples. So you mentioned the 6-minute videos. So they're using the big data from learning that we collect on the platform. Philip Gore did a study of student engagement versus video length, and he found 6-minute videos were the most engaging. Other examples, talking to a professor in the philosophy department at University of Texas, Austin. So he said, he teaches a course on the campus, and he taught a MOOC as well. And what he said was very interesting. He said, on campus, he ends up having to lecture for about 40 minutes. And in the end, it gives 10 minutes for discussion. And he says, just imagine, it's a philosophy class. And in philosophy, you're supposed to philosophize and brainstorm and discuss and shoot the breeze. And here I'm lecturing for 40, 45 minutes traditionally, and I have 5 minutes or 10 minutes for discussion. And he said, it's terrible. So he said, in the fall, he taught a MOOC. He's salivating over the concept of flipping the classroom in the fall. And he says, I just can't imagine it'd be so much fun. Heck, maybe I'll spend 5 minutes, just covering a few things, but use 50 minutes for discussion in a philosophy class. So how much fun will that be? So, that's one example where the discussion can be a big part of the lecture and where the basic concepts and so on can be garnered online. So that's another, place where the on-campus part can be used for discussion. Another example where what we've learned in these videos and so on has been tremendous, is that by having videos interleaved with assessment, so where you learn something and then you try something out before you go on to something else. It turns out there's a word for it in the educational science called mastery learning, where you don't go to something else unless you've mastered something. So that is very helpful to students. They watch a video, they do some you get some content, and then we ask them and give them a little mini exercise where they go and test out the knowledge of what they've learned. And what's amazing is that when you watch a lecture, you think you got it. Oh yeah, I got it. But then when you ask a little question, no, you don't got it. Okay? And so it's nothing like checking and saying, you know what, I actually didn't get it. Let me go back and do it. And many students have told us that they've been going back and looking at the video 6-7 times before they move on, because until they really get it. So that's another amazing learning part, which is by giving students a way to check themselves as to did they really get it before they go on to something else. It really is not just engaging, but also they tend to have better outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Hello. Sorry. Thanks very much. Actually, earlier today, I asked a question from Professor Anant about the nature of edX and the ways in which it might actually transform the function of universities globally. But I guess I was sidetracked a little bit in my question, and so consequently I didn't really get to the point in the answer that I received either. So I thought about it a little more, and I thought I would ask it again. Unlike this kind of hype about the MOOCs as being this kind of revolutionary technology or a revolution in delivery of education, I actually think that it is an inevitable evolution or inevitable phenomenon within the knowledge-based economy that we are currently living under. And I wonder whether the MOOCs actually, instead of, we're talking about them as being, getting a wider access to a first world-class education where you wouldn't normally have the chance to, whether we could think about them as kind of in a longer term as restructuring or reforming, reconfiguring the function of the universities as to an information provider rather than education provider. I think there's a lot of still branding of education that goes on with the MOOCs that hasn't really changed so much from the conventional lecturing experiences and conventional, for example,
sure. Can we, what you're asking is
whether these kind of MOOCs are actually fundamentally changing the nature or the function of the university globally, to not just an education provider that will be branded as a Harvard education or whatever, to rather just mere information provider, as an initiator of some sort of knowledge circulating around the world. Yeah.
Did you have an answer to that?
You want to try?
Well, I think that will be the outcome for some people and some institutions. I am very confident that existing institutions will retain and fight for what I'll call their brand to make sure that ANU still continues to position itself as being, the forefront university. And you have to realize that a lot more happens at, we talk about ANU, what our education is here, which is it involves research. And you're not going to suddenly take research and somehow do hands-on experiments and displace it, at least not till we have a lot more sophisticated technology than we do now. So I suspect that for some people, it will be that we provide information in a way not dissimilar to a textbook that hopefully is better and is more useful, and a lot of people will get that. But I do believe the fundamental core of the university will stay there as a place for education, for research, for communication of ideas in person. I don't see that changing because I think the universities will do everything they can to retain their status, and I don't see other players coming in and disrupting that to the point where the elite brand of a Harvard or even the ANU will disappear, at least quickly. 100 years, who knows? But it is a very fundamental change to what universities are able to do, so it shouldn't be understated. But I think it's not going to fundamentally change the place of universities in society. That's my guess.
Okay, thank you. Question?
So I've got two quick questions, I hope. For those of us, and it seems that many people are interested in auditing the courses rather than taking them for credit. And so I'm wondering if there's a rationale for holding the courses at a particular time, because those of us who want to audit might have liked to have started as soon as it became available in February or something, or take it in May, because we're not that interested in the interaction, we're just interested in seeing what the course is about. So that's the first question. One is about rationale for timing. And the second question is, one of the things that seems to me to be quite exciting is that if you're developing a new area where there are a limited number of people who can teach it, you can actually start to develop a global faculty, and different universities can then take that information and use it to accredit the course in whatever way they see fit. Is that something that you've given some thought to?
Yep.
So to your first question about the timing of courses, that and you know, I wouldn't make a difference between auditors versus people who want to get a verified certificate. I mean, different people want to, the courses start at different times. And there I think is you know, if you were to compile 10 grand challenge questions of online learning, I think that is one grand challenge question, which is what I call self-paced courses versus synchronous courses. A synchronous course is one which starts at a given time, has bi-weekly or weekly or whatever deadlines. You create a cohort, and the cohort of students moves through the course. So on the discussion forums and so on, you have topical discussions at any given time, and they all are talking about the same homework, for instance. And they're deadlines, so you know, if you're like me, you know, things don't get done unless you give me a deadline. And so, and then you have a final exam. And so that's a synchronous course. Another extreme is a self-paced course, where, look, the content is out there. You can start the course whenever you want. There are no deadlines. All the deadlines are a year later. So, and on edX, we have both types of courses. So, for example, Brian and Paul's course on the Mysteries of the Universe is a synchronous course, which has a start date and deadlines and so on. There's a course called CS50X, it's Introduction to Computer Science. This is by Harvard X. David Malin's course. It's a self-paced course where it nominally started on January 1st, and all the assignments come due exactly a year later. So all the deadlines are on a given day a year later, which means it's a self-paced course which says you can start whenever you want, you can submit the assignments whenever you want. As long as all the work is done by a certain date, you can get the credential. That's self-paced. Now, one of the grand challenge questions is which is the right way to do it? And I don't know the answer.
Okay.
And I think the challenge there is that with a synchronous course, deadlines help and cohorts help. But with a self-paced course, people can pace themselves and start when they want. So, you know, there are trade-offs. I don't know the right answer.
We're running out of time, so maybe you could just quickly address the idea of the global faculty.
So, I think that's a very intriguing idea where first of all, we are already hearing of collaboration across multiple universities where universities are talking about saying, hey, look, we have this really, really great course in maybe astronomy. And another university might have just an absolutely great course in ecosystems. And they might say, hey, you know, why don't we use this course from astronomy? And other university can say, hey, look, I could use that course in ecology. So this way I can broaden the experience for my students, and both of us are better off. And so in some sense, it's even within a university, you now have a global faculty in that you're using faculty from other universities to offer a broader range of courses for your own students. So I really do believe that this is already happening across our ex-consortium universities. And I expect that we'll see more of this globalization of creation of courses as well.
Okay. I know there's another couple of questions. We're out of time.
One more.
Sorry?
Give him one more.
Yeah, we're out of time, so please make your questions very short and your answers shorter.
She looks at me.
I was touched by your comment that education is a basic human right and that you've made it all open source to make it freely available. I was wondering then why edX is limiting itself to certain universities, not broadening out to other content providers in other sectors in education.
A good question, and we struggle with it every day. And people have accused us of being elitist. And if you really believe this is a human right and this is such a fundamental thing and disruptive, why don't you give access to everybody? Why are you favoring some universities? Part of our challenge is that we have limited bandwidth. And we could open up to everybody and do a lousy job at it. And so we decided we will gradually increase the partnership so that as the bandwidth increases, we'll be able to support the more partners. We work very closely with the partners, so we assign program managers to all our partners. I like to talk to all the faculty who've taught a course. There's a number of things we do which is very different from others. It's a lot more high touch. And we just can't do that with 1,000 partners. So we're growing slowly. That said, you still want to increase the partnership. So on edX, we are talking about gradually increasing the membership. We are doing that. And the second thing is by making the platform available as open source, we tell anybody can do it. You can go form a consortium. And so in China, Shuetong X is a consortium of 20 universities using our platform. Japan launched JMOOC 3 weeks ago. France launched a France University Numérique, and they want to grow to 200 universities. The 5 times as many as are on edX, and it's our platform. So we're making it open source. Our hope is that we can more rapidly democratize education and not let our own bandwidth and our own failing, in some sense, hamper the growth of this platform and the growth of learning throughout the world.
Okay, thank you. Final question?
I was just wondering what your views on the idea of for lecturers as well as universities navigating plurality of courses, so that idea of having a lot of courses from around the world on the same subjects, but also then not wanting to then end up with a limit and narrowing down of opinions that are available and thoughts, particularly in areas of like arts and humanities and some of the higher ends of astrophysics and things where people are still debating.
Interesting problem. Right now, there are, open platform, everyone and their dog can go out and put a course out there if they want. Market forces will tend to pick a couple. Okay, so I do think if there is such a divergent opinion that you need to have 10 or 15, that's a problem because at any given university, of course, you only get one. I don't think the people who have those divergent opinions will disappear, but they will have the ability to express themselves. Whether or not the number of people will, their university will be willing to support them or whatever to produce the massively online open course is a big question. In some sense, it's much better because anyone can put a course out there who has the support of their university to do so. And so the market can go out and learn the whole divergent view. But I think it's an interesting area which I can't predict the future.
Even on edX, we have a number of courses on the same topic. So the course that I taught, Circuits and Electronics, Tsinghua is teaching a course on Circuits and Electronics, and I think there's a third university with a similar course. And on our platform, we made all our tools available, so each university can use the tools that they developed or we developed and use that to enrich their courses. I would maybe have a slightly different opinion, which is that I think every professor, every teacher, every culture brings a different imprimatur to a course. And so I think there'll be lots of courses in every in a discipline. Different countries have different ways of teaching things. And then learners will gravitate to whoever they find to be suited to their style and their language and culture and examples and so on and so forth. And so the localization of content will be very different by country and culture. So I actually do believe that we will have a much broader range of courses than you might be exposed to in a single university.
On that point, I think we'll call it a night. So Brian Schmidt, Anant Agarwal, thank you very much. If you could give them a round of applause, please.